Four former bank bosses in Iceland have been jailed for financial fraud. They were accused of hiding the fact a Qatari investor bought into the firm with money lent illegally by the bank itself. It went bust in 2008, helping to cripple Iceland's economy. Let's now cross live to RT's financial analyst Max Kaiser for more insight. Mr. Max Kaiser, welcome to RT. So what are the broader ramifications of this case?
Well, I think you have to understand that in this crime that was committed in Iceland with the participation of the government in Qatar, you have a classic Ponzi scheme where the bank was lending money to Qatar and Qatar was buying shares in banks like Kaupthing Bank in Iceland to artificially inflate the price of the stock of the bank, and then they would use that artificially high bank stock price to make loans, to make acquisitions, and then when the bubble burst, it all came down. And of course, there was a crime committed, and the Icelandic government is now prosecuting for that financial fraud. But what's interesting is that if you look at what's happening in the UK right now at HSBC, Barclays, Lloyds, or Royal Bank of Scotland in particular, they're participating in exactly the same fraud with the help and participation of the Bank of England. It's a program called quantitative easing, where the central bank loans the commercial banks to buy stock or bonds, in this case, in the central bank. So they are doing the exact same thing that in Iceland is a crime. I think because Iceland, Russia, Iran, and China are all banking systems that are outside of the control of the Federal Reserve Bank in America or the Bank of England in the UK. They are free to prosecute financial crimes. We don't have that freedom in the UK because the bankers are protected by the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, the Federal Reserve in New York, who collude on a global basis to line the pockets of the criminals, in this case the bankers in the UK and America. And of course the economies are suffering catastrophically as a result of this. Poverty is on the rise and living standards in the UK are crashing worse than they have ever crashed going back to Victorian times.
Any chance other high-flying financial scammers will now find themselves in the dock on similar charges then?
Well, like I was alluding to there a moment ago, the banking zones outside of Russia, Iran, China, and Iceland are all pretty much controlled by what's called or known as the Rothschild influence. The Rothschilds, of course, and their family really owns the central banks in America and the Bank of England. But China, Russia, Iran, and Iceland don't have to answer to the Rothschilds, so they're free to prosecute what I call these financial terrorists.
To what extent should governments control institutions, financial institutions and their deals then?
Well, governments are completely co-opted by the bankers. So the UK government, for example, has been co-opted by Barclays, and Royal Bank of Scotland in particular was just caught targeting small businesses for death, where they were setting small businesses up to fail so that one of their affiliates could swoop in and buy assets for pennies on the dollar. So RBS is acting as what I call a financial terrorist with the full cooperation of David Cameron, George Osborne, and Mark Carney, the head of the Bank of England. So they are fully engaged in the confiscation of wealth using what I call financial apartheid and other tricks to essentially steal wealth from the vast majority for the benefit of a very few on the inside, a coterie of bankers who work globally, but not in Iceland. Iceland had the courage to do what we've seen in some other territories by prosecuting banksters. In Vietnam recently, a banker caught committing financial crimes was executed. Now, there needs to be a deterrent against financial fraud of this magnitude. Capital punishment seems maybe to be a good idea if it will deter bankers from committing acts of financial terrorism. In America, capital punishment is legal. I say use it to go after the really bad guys, the people on Wall Street, the people at the central bank. Stop killing poor black kids in Texas because you don't like the way they look under capital punishment laws, and go after the white guys on Wall Street who are committing genuine acts of financial terrorism. They've got capital punishment. Use it. Use it to better society, not just kill poor kids down south.
All right. We got your point, Max. Max Kaiser, financial analyst and host of the Kaiser Report. Many thanks indeed. We appreciate it.